So since in this channel our specialty is to talk about horror movies, especially about their monstrous protagonists, why not to make a list about the most underrated monsters of cinema? That is, the ones that are not so much remembered or that are well remembered but should be remembered much more. So since my job in this channel is to talk about this, let's talk about these monsters, plus talk about the movies that they are the main stars that I always wanted to talk about here in the channel. My name is Gustavo, but you can call me Gus, and let's go. So since we are talking about monsters that you might know or not, we're going to exclude the most famous of all time, that is Alien, Predator, and The Thing, because these are my favorites, there's no discussion about it, but it wouldn't be fair with the other characters in this list, because these ones are very famous. So let's go, and the number 10 is Hardware. This is a movie that many people don't know, but it mixtures horror with apocalyptic sci-fi. And the story takes place in a dystopic future where this guy, who is a scavenger, finds parts of a robot that is buried in the desert and takes them to his girlfriend, who is a sculptress, as a gift for her to make some art with it. Very romantic. But what he didn't know is that this robot is still operational and his name is Mark 13, a combat machine that was built by the army to create genocide in certain populations. All because of the planet having an issue with overpopulation. That is, Mark 13 is a killing machine that has only one objective: kill everyone in his way. And this is where the movie becomes this mixture of horror with sci-fi, where they have to escape from this killing machine. I know that he is not a monster essentially, but I consider him a monster because this murder characteristic of the machine. And his look is quite awesome. And this is not exactly a great movie, but it's a pretty cool watch, besides having this post-apocalyptic setting with an awesome photography and this idea of the cyberpunk future that is dirty. It really takes back to the visual style of mangas like Alita Battle Angel and this whole element of the cybernetic trash as well. And in number 9 comes Pumpkinhead. This is another movie that can be unknown to most audiences, but the story is very interesting. In the plot you have this farmer portrayed by Lance Henriksen, an actor that I talked very much in this channel in many videos, that lives with his son in his farm when some stupid young people with their motorbikes show up and accidentally hit his son, killing the boy. And Lance Henriksen, that is filled with anger and desire for revenge, goes after a witch to ask her to resurrect his son. But she says that she can't do that, so Lance Henriksen just asks for revenge. Only that. So she makes the man dig up a corpse in the cemetery, bring it back to her, and with his blood and the blood of his dead son, she brings a demonic creature to life that is Pumpkinhead, a monster that will kill all the responsible for killing his son. Again, this is a movie that is not great because the death scenes themselves are not that good, but as I said, this very sinister plot is very interesting and the photography is also wonderful. In fact, this movie was directed by Stan Winston, a master of puppet animatronics from the greatest classics of cinema like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, the Alien Queen from Aliens, and the Terminator. So it's a worth watch. And in number 8 we are going with Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And this is exactly what you have here. Killer clowns that are actually aliens that come to Earth to make fun of the humans and then kill them later. And this movie is wonderful. It's obvious that it is a mixture of comedy and horror, and the killer clowns from the title are very funny, each one with their different characteristics and very absurd tricks that they use to kill their victims. For example, creating shadows with their hands that devour people, or like in one of my favorite scenes that one of the clowns enter in a fight with a bike gang, so he challenges one of the members to a boxing match and just rips the guy's head off with only one punch, in the best Jason Voorhees style. Another thing is that besides the movie being hilarious, it has great visual effects for the time. The sets, the animatronics, everything is top-notch. And curiously, it is a movie that didn't get any sequels, but it should, because it had all the potential to become an iconic franchise. But at least it became a cult classic, because I've seen news that this year a game will be released adapting this movie. There's even a trailer on YouTube and it looks great. I think it is a game in the survivor mode that you have to escape from the clowns, but we have to wait and see. And even though I'm not a gamer, I would love to play it. And in number 7 comes Wishmaster, a movie produced by the King of Horror, Wes Craven. I think many of you might remember this movie. I just think the story is great. The monster here is the Djinn, or actually the Genie, like the lamp genie, that in the plot wakes up from a millennial sleep after being released from a rock that he was trapped by a woman named Alex, and now he needs to grant 3 wishes for her. But everything she wishes, he malignantly makes it into a nightmare. That is, or he grants the wish in an evil way to kill someone or to cause more harm to her life. But the most fun is when other people make wishes to him and he inverts things in an ironic way, or killing this person or making something very evil to them. I remember watching the first and the second movie in the franchise and thinking they are very fun. This creature Djinn is very well crafted. It's another movie that has great visual effects, tons and tons of gore, even rivaling with the Hellraiser franchise. Not mentioning the cameos of other horror stars like Robert Englund's The Freddy Krueger, Tony Todd from the Candyman movies, and Kane Hodder who played Jason in some Friday the 13th movies. It could have been a great franchise if the movies were more well invested, but like I said, the first and the second movie are very worth watching it for their trashiness. In number 6 comes Critters, movie that I already mentioned here in the best horror sequels of all time, and both Critters 1 and 2 are awesome, and these little monsters are basically alien furballs, carnivorous. Also, some of their fur can be shot from their bodies, and if it hits somebody, it can paralyze their victims. And the most interesting is that Critters has this very interesting mythology. They are actually space prisoners that were being transported from one space prison to other, but they kidnap this ship and come to Earth. Then 2 alien space bounty hunters also come to Earth to hunt the creatures for their bounty. And they are transmorphs, which means that they can morph into the appearance of anyone in Earth. Something that creates many hilarious scenes like they watching someone in the TV or seeing someone on a magazine and taking the shape of the image they are seeing. Sometimes they become a rock star or a Playboy bunny. And the movie itself is very funny, especially because of the critters themselves that are very hilarious. Because even though they are these small furballs, they communicate mentally, and this creates hilarious dialogues. And like I said, the first 2 movies are great, especially the second one that has this creature evolution, that is the Critter Ball. Basically, all of them join in one Megazord style of huge ball that can roll and devour anything in their way. It's wonderful. And before we continue this list, let me give you a little message of the channel. And if you are liking the content of Trashing with Gus, please consider becoming a patron of the channel. This is a small channel, and channels like mine, where the creators don't receive 1 cent to create the content, struggle a lot to finally get to the point that they can support themselves. So I very humbly ask you that if you can, go to the link of my Patreon below in the description of the video and contribute with whatever value you can donate for the channel to keep going so we can keep trashing together forever. I'll be eternally grateful. Plus, there are categories of rewards that you will receive from the channel depending of which one you choose. And now let's go to the action with horror, with the number 5, Blade 2. And I'm not a huge fan of the creature vampire itself, but the vampires in this movie that are the Reapers, these monsters that are basically inspired on Nosferatu and have this big mandible that opens itself like a bug with stings. In fact, they are a kind of vampire that is treated by the movie as a kind that spreads a virus. And a movie that is directed by Guillermo del Toro has all the things that he loves, like exploring a creature and its biology, to the point of having this autopsy scene where one of the Reapers is opened up, and it's very grotesque but cool at the same time, because of the animatronic that shows how its organism reacts when it gets in touch with blood, and what it uses in the stings of the mandible to paralyze its victims. Just like Critters, Blade 2 is a fucking awesome movie. Sometimes I think it's even better than the first one in terms of action. And this Reaper creature should have returned in other franchise sequels. But in number 4 comes the Blob, a creature that is quite different from the other ones we talked here, because we are talking about a blob, a substance, but a very dangerous substance that melts and drains the body of the people. It actually feeds on their organism to get bigger. And The Blob is one of my favorite movies that were broadcast on TV when I was a kid, as Blade 2 is a movie that mixtures action with adventure and horror. Besides having good characters, and the whole story has a tone of a Stephen King story, because of this plot that takes place in a city with many characters, and all of them have their individual characteristics, even though most of them end up being just meat to be devoured by the Blob. And it's also an example of movie that has great visual effects for the time. There are all kinds of tricks for them, like animatronics, puppets, composition of scenes to make the Blob look bigger or smaller in an environment, and the scenes of the Blob melting people are shocking till this day, making this creature one of the most threatening of all time. Now going to the bronze medal in number 3, it's another movie that I loved as a kid, Deep Rising. Movie that brought this giant octopus, kinda like a kaiju monster. A creature that has many tentacles, but all these tentacles have certain functions. Because besides opening huge mouths with sharp teeth in their extremities, these tentacles are also used to capture their victims and drain them until the belly of the creature. But instead of devouring them inside these tentacles during the way until the creature's belly, they actually drink the victims, almost like the Blob that melts them, but here they are basically drinking all the fluids of their bodies and leaving only the bones later, which creates some very shocking scenes as well, like one of the characters that is actually released from one of the tentacles during the process of being drained, and you can see in this scene what happens with his carcass. And like I said before, Deep Rising is also a big action movie directed by Stephen Sommers, a guy that directed nothing less than the 2 first Mummies and Van Helsing. So he's a guy who understands about fun action movies that has this mixture with horror. And the plot of this movie takes place basically in a high-tech cruise ship that is invaded by this creature. Then we have some pirates that also break into the ship to rob it, but when they get there they find only the bones of the passengers of the ship, and they also have to face this creature inside the boat. So it's an almost perfect movie that mixtures this idea of characters stuck in a place, trying to escape from it, and facing a bizarre creature. It's a blast. And the silver medal goes to the movie that has probably the best body horror element in it, that is The Fly. And I've already mentioned here in the channel that this is the best movie for me of body transformation. The story is very basic. We have here the scientist Seth Brundle, played by Jeff Goldblum, and he is testing a teletransportation machine. And when he tests the machine with a human testing subject that is himself, a fly accidentally enters the pod with him, and the machine reads both of these individuals' DNAs and combines them when teletransporting their bodies. But the transformation doesn't occur right away. It actually takes place during some days after the testing. And at first, a transformation that looked quite beneficial, with Seth Brundle gaining some powers like super strength or climbing the walls, suddenly becomes this quite negative transformation, destroying his body while he transforms into a creature that even he doesn't know what it is. And of course, one of the best things in this movie is the makeup, creating these phases of transformation in Jeff Goldblum, focusing on the gore and being quite disgusting. Because this is one of the most disgusting movies ever made, but in a good sense. By the way, his performance is incredible, reaching the point that you don't even recognize the actor Jeff Goldblum in the end. And it's a movie that really touched me because it has a tragic ending. The director David Cronenberg already mentioned in interviews that the transformation of Jeff Goldblum in this movie is an analogy to degenerative diseases in real life. And yes, this theme develops through the whole movie until reaching a very sad and depressive ending. But it's a great classic of cinema. And the golden medal goes to Tremors. And there's no argument, this is a beautiful trashiness. The person who had this idea of these creatures who have these serpent bodies and these big mouths that also devour their victims, plus they move underneath the ground, chasing them through the shockwaves that they create upon just walking over the ground, is a genius. The first movie is amazingly beautiful. You have Kevin Bacon playing one of the roles more towards the beginning of his career, that is a basic caricature of a character, and it's also one of those movies that mixtures action with horror and comedy. Although it has some very sinister things like a guy that was hanging on a pole, a light pole, for many days just to not go down to the ground and be eaten by the creatures and end up dying in there. And it also has very suspenseful moments, because the characters here that are very charismatic, by the way, need to always stay in a place high above the ground, which means never fully touching the floor. If not, the creatures will get them, which creates some very hilarious moments and very suspenseful ones, like I said. And different than many of the franchises that we mentioned here, Tremors had many sequels, going to the movie number 7 with the same character that first appeared in the first movie, Burt Gummer, a guy that became this Tremors hunter. And there was a TV series, actually an almost TV series, that never got to the air because it was cancelled, that would bring Kevin Bacon's character back, now facing another kind of Tremors. It's very sad, but the first movie is a classic and must be remembered and rewatched just like all the other movies of this list. What about you? Did you like this list? Have you ever seen these movies with these creatures? Which one is your favorite? And which other monsters of cinema that are underrated do you remember? Comment below. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so we can keep trashing together. And this is it for now. See you in the next Trashing with Gus, and bye bye.